What's up YouTube? Robbie Vapes back again, and today we're doing a head-to-head showdown between two heavyweight sub-ohm tanks, the Crown by Uwell and the Smok TFV4. So stay tuned. That's right YouTube, today we are doing a heavyweight battle between the Crown by Uwell and the TFV4 by Smok to determine which of these two tanks is the better option. Now, to figure out which of these is going to be the better option, there is a number of criteria we have to look at. I've narrowed it down to 5 key points. Additionally, what we're going to talk about is vaping style, because vaping style does play a role in these two tanks. For example, in my opinion, the Crown tank performs better at low wattages, while the TFV4, in my opinion, performs much better at high wattages than the Crown does. And when I'm talking high wattages, I'm talking 100 watts plus. Now, again, we'll get into that at the end, and we'll talk about vapor production. That is one of the categories. But speaking of categories, let's talk about the 5 categories we are going to look at. First up, we have the packaging. Now, I know packaging does not matter in the actual performance of a tank or anything like that, but I wanted to get into it just to show you the differences in the packaging and the different packaging styles. Secondly, we're going to talk about quality and craftsmanship. That's pretty self-explanatory. It's how did it come out of the box, were there any issues, and so on and so forth. The third category we're going to judge on is the coils themselves. Both of these have very different coils. We will get into that further, and we'll talk about which of these coils I prefer and why, and what some of the differences are between the two coils. Fourth, we're going to talk about pricing. Now, because there's so much variance in pricing depending on where you get these tanks from, I am only going to judge pricing based on what I paid for these tanks. And that would be at any local shop that I went to. What did I pay for these tanks? That's what my pricing is going to be based off of. Some of you may say, well, I can get it cheaper than that, or I paid more than that, and that's okay. Basically what we're doing is just doing a pricing guide roughly just based on my experience. If you had a different experience, or maybe the tank that I found more expensive was actually cheaper for you, let me know in the comments, and maybe that does alter your decision. But for me, I'm just going based off what I paid for them. Now finally, we have, of course, the big one, vapor production and flavor. Which of these two tanks performs better, and which of these two tanks has a better flavor? Now again, to answer that question, it's going to depend on your vaping style. If you're a vapor who only likes to vape around 50 to 60 watts, your opinion is probably going to be much different than mine is. Now for me, I like vaping a very hot vape, a very warm vape, and pretty much with both these tanks, I take them up to around 100 watts or more. So I already know in my mind which one, as far as my vaping style, is going to win in that category for the most part. But again, we'll get into that at the end of it. So with all that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to get down and dirty with these two tanks, check out what you get in the box, talk about the two tanks a bit, come back up top, and then we'll do the vapor test and just find out which one of these produces more vapor, which one of them hits better, and that's going to be at different wattages as well. Now, because it's going to be a long video, and I understand a lot of people don't want to watch the whole thing, what I'll do is I'll have categories listed for each of these head-to-head battles in the description below at each time, so you can actually pick what time to fast forward to if you're more interested in, say, the coils, or if you're more interested in the price, or if you're more interested in the vapor. All of those things, I'll have them in the description below, so you can always fast forward to those. Now with that being said, I think I've rambled on enough up here. Let's get down and dirty with these two tanks and finally figure out once and for all which one is a better tank. Alright guys, we are down and dirty with the Crown and the Smok TFV4. What we're going to do is check out both the packaging, and we'll start with the Crown, so we'll put the TFV4 off to the side for now. Look at the packaging for the Crown. As you can see, it comes in a very simple package. Crown down there. You have your spare glass tank, you have 2 coils plus the tank itself, and along the side it says Crown, some information on the back, and again I'll let you pause it if you want to read it, and of course the contents, and again I will let you pause it if you want to read it as well. But that is basically the Crown tank. Very simple packaging, very easy to get to everything, which is kind of nice. So you have your 2 coils here. This particular box came with the temp control coils. You do have the option to get the temp control version or the
original. This one's temp control. The first Crown I got, because this is my second one, was actually the original coils, so just keep that in mind. You'll typically get like a 0.25 and a 0.5, and in this case you get both of them being the 2 nickel coils. You also have a spare glass tank in here, which we'll take out really quickly just to look at. There it is down there. As you can see, very clean, very, it's actually been unused, so you can kind of tell that just by how clean it is. And the reason why I'm focusing so much on the spare glass is because in the TFV4, I had an issue with mine, and I just wanted to show you that on the Crown I did not have that issue. Now, of course, you also have the tank itself in here, and this is just put off to the side. As you can see, I've washed it out a little bit, so it's a little bit wet right now, but it is cleaned out somewhat, so I can take them both apart. But again, very nice packaging, very simple, and very straightforward. Now, that is the Crown tank. As you can see here, you get some spare O-rings underneath and a manual. And that is pretty much what comes with the tank itself. Some instructions on how to drip and things like that, but that is the packaging for the Crown tank. So we'll put that off to the side now and bring out the TFV4. TFV4, on the other hand, does not have such simple packaging. It's actually a very nice packaging. It feels very high quality. It feels very well made. As you can see here, you have a sleeve. On the sleeve, you have the picture of the tank itself, their patented tri-coil or triple coil, and the contents of the box include spare glass, the quadruple coil, the triple coil, and the RBA deck as well. You will notice that the Crown did not include an RBA deck. That is sold separately. But anyways, moving back on to the TFV4. On the box here, you have some specifications, capacity, things like that. You also have what the kit includes, as well as the introduction kind of thing. And again, I'll let you pause it if you want to read that, but I'm not going to do that in this video. We want to try and keep this video relatively short considering. Now, here's the package itself. As you can see, Smok or Smok, depending on your pronunciation, and serial codes, things like that. On the bottom, you have the copyright information and the trademarks, and that's pretty much the box itself. As we open it up, we are greeted with the tank right away, right at the forefront. Here's the tank. I do have the quad coil in there right now. It just says Smok or Smok TFV4. Once we remove this top part, put it off to the side for a second, you also get a user manual. Very simple, very straightforward. Nothing too crazy there. You also have this, which is interesting. It says here, the QA passed. And I say it's interesting because when we get to the actual craftsmanship portion, there's a few issues I had with this, and I'll get to that later on in a few minutes here. You also get, of course, some cotton in here, and you get a pre-made coil, which is actually in the RBA deck right now, so you will get to see the pre-made coil. You also have one of these vape rings or vape bands, which will go around the tank. You do get two colors. You get a white and a black one. This is the white one. The black one is pretty much the exact same, but the writing is white. The rest of the band is black. Now you also get a screwdriver in here. This is not a blue screwdriver, as I'm sure you can tell. This is for the RBA deck. I actually like this screwdriver better. It feels almost like heavier and more weighted, so it's easier to work with. But again, that's just my opinion. And you also get a spare juice filled cap, I guess if you want to call it that. And as you can see here, it's completely like a rubberized material. Very flexible. Additionally, you also get the RBA deck and the quad coil, and the triple coil should be installed, but of course I've already been using it, so instead I have the triple coil in here, right here, and the RBA section just in here. With this one, you also get a spare glass tank, and if you remember what I was talking about with quality control, I don't know if you can see this, there's actually a chip out of this glass tank somewhere, and I'll have to try and locate it just to show you guys what I mean, but it actually came chipped, and that was a little bit disappointing. And what was worse is that not only did the spare glass tank come chipped, the actual glass on there was also chipped. And that was really something I didn't expect from a tank of this quality or of this stature kind of thing. So there is a chip in here somewhere. I don't know if you've already seen it. I've been looking over it. I'm having trouble finding it now. It was right along the edge. Now both chips were very minor, and they wouldn't have actually, and they shouldn't make a difference in the actual juice holding. They will both hold juices without leaking, but again, it was chipped, and that was very disappointing for me. So again, that's just something to watch out for. Make sure yours is not chipped, and make sure that yours is okay. even though it was a very small chip, as you can see, I could barely find it. In fact, I couldn't find it on the on camera here. The fact that it was chipped was disappointing to me. Next up, we also have the RBA section. Now keep in mind, this one does come with an RBA section, whereas the Crown does not. That is a separate purchase. Very easy to work on as far as the room. However, one thing I don't like about this RBA section, and we'll probably talk more about it in the coil section of this video, but if you notice here, it's one of these ones where you have to build through these little tiny holes and it has to be bent a certain way. But again, that's not something I prefer to do. I like working on an easier build. You can use these screws as the as a connection points, but it looks messy and then it doesn't really fit right. You have to make sure it's cut really nicely when you put the cap on or the chimney on. But anyways, going back to this coil, this is a coil that it came with right out of the box. It's a 0.75 ohm coil, so it's pretty high resistance, but it isn't too bad of a coil, to be honest. It can handle about 65-70 watts out of the box, so that's not too bad. You'll also notice the juice flow here is very wide open. It's got very nice juice wells or juice holes, and that wicks up really nicely. And I will say this is probably one of the nicest wicking RBA sections I've ever worked with. Now, again, the fact that it's designed the way it is with the connection pins being like kind of through that little part with the bendy part to it, I don't like that, but I will admit it makes up for it with the juice well. This juice well is phenomenal. So that's the RBA section. Moving on, we've also got the tri-coil here. And as you can see here, there's a tri-coil. You can kind of see in there a little bit, but it does come with that. And again, we'll talk more about that in the coil section of this video. So with that being said, that's pretty much the packaging and what each of these come with. I have to give the winner in the packaging category to Smok. And again, this is ignoring the fact of the QA issues or anything like that. That will be in the next section here. But just based on the packaging alone, the presentation, and ignoring the fact that I had 2 chip glasses, those are 2 things that again we'll talk about later on. But ignoring that fact, I do like the packaging more for the Smok tank than I do for the Crown tank. Now let's talk about quality control. We already mentioned on the Smok, and we'll keep with the Smok in this trend because it's already in front of us. So we'll just keep moving on with the Smok. Quality control issues, there was a lot of them, guys. There was more than I expected. First of all, both pieces of glass were chipped, and I'll show you what I mean here by taking this apart and opening it up. I'll take it off camera, take it apart, and I'll show you what I mean. Alright guys, we are back, and I found the crack. It's just right along here. It's not showing up very well on camera, but I can kind of dig my nail into it, and it is cracked just a little bit. And maybe if I do this, maybe it'll show better, but yeah, it's not showing too well right now. But anyways, there is a crack along here. Again, it's very minor. It doesn't actually affect the juice at all, or it doesn't affect the capacity to hold the juice. It does still hold juice very nicely, but again, the fact it's cracked is a bit of a piss off because it's just such a small thing, but it should have been caught in QA. So again, that's just a little bit of a grudge I have with that. Moving on, we also have the coil itself in here. There's not really any issues with the coil. It's actually a really nice coil. I have no complaints about the coil as far as the actual quality control goes. But one thing I will say is that I did not clean this tank before filling it, and I paid the price. It was full of machine oil. I had to basically dump out my first fill up with it and actually wash it out afterwards because it was full of machining oil. The Crown tank, I did the same thing where I vaped it right out of the box without cleaning it, and it was no issues. This one, however, definitely had machining oil on it. Further to that, the drip tip itself had these little wires sticking out from it, like almost like leftover metal residue, and it was right in the middle here, just in between the airflow control valve and the top part of the mouthpiece. I actually was able to get it all out, but it did take a little bit of time. And again, it just doesn't reflect well on a company when they put something out that is just messy, like right out of the packaging. So that to me was disappointing for the Smok tank. I don't know if I'm the only one who's had these issues with the glass, with the residue, or with the drip tip or excess metal kind of thing, but I would imagine that if anyone else has had this issue, they'd be a little bit upset as well. So just keep that in mind. Also talking about the tank, let's talk about the actual design of the tank as well. And with this tank, again, the tank is actually very well designed. I have no fault for the actual design of the tank. It was just the quality control of it. So for example, one of the things I really like is how to top fill. In order to top fill with this tank, all you're going to do is push this out. And my hands are a little bit sticky, so you're going to push it out just like so, and you can then top fill from there. This does expand a little bit to actually help with fitting in multiple sizes for the dropper or for the bottles, for squeeze bottles, so it will fit multiple sizes in there, and you shouldn't have any issues with filling it up as well. Now getting back to the tank itself, you also have adjustable airflow, and again, I apologize because this is actually a lot stickier than I thought it was. I tried to clean it up beforehand, but clearly it didn't work out too well, and there's still some on there. But there's your adjustable airflow ring, and again, it's very simple to use, and it does sit flush with the device as well, which I really like. And to turn it, you're just going to have to turn it around like this, and it will adjust. Actually much easier than this, but again, I'm on camera. My arms are actually quite far away from myself right now, so I'm almost stretched out right. But again, yeah, so it will adjust quite easily when you're doing it normally. Obviously on camera it's a lot harder to do, so just keep that in mind. You also have your connection pin down there, really nice, no issues with the connection pin. And again, like I said, the airflow control is really nice because it does sit flush, and you do have a little bit of knurling on there as well. Just in between the 4 airflow slots. Speaking of 4 airflow slots, this one does have 4 of them, which is nice because it'll give you a very, very cooled off vape, and it will allow you to vape at higher temperatures because of it. So keep that in mind. Having the 4, the Crown only has 2. So take it for what you will, but that is something to note. If you like a lot of airflow, you're going to be good on this one. Moving on, we'll talk about the drip tip here. You do have airflow in the drip tip, and honestly, how it works is you basically have the outer ring is where the airflow comes in, and the inner opening is where you're basically getting all your vapor from, or from the atomizer itself is coming up through that middle ring. Now, I have to ask the one question that I cannot help but wonder: does anyone actually use the airflow on the drip tips? Because it seems like more and more companies these days are actually putting these airflow drip tips on, and to be honest, most people who I've talked to in person don't even use them. In fact, most of them don't even use the factory drip tips. They use their own, which I guess reminds me, this is a 510 drip tip, so it will fit most standard size drip tips. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Is this airflow on the drip tip really necessary? Is it just a gimmick to you guys, or do any of you guys actually use the airflow on the drip tip? Even vaping it as high as I do, at 125 watts plus, I still don't use the airflow on the drip tip. I don't need to. There's more than enough airflow in the on the tank itself, so I have no reason to use this airflow, to be honest. Now, that being said, that is the Smok TFV4 tank. Let's talk about the quality and the craftsmanship of the Crown tank. Now, the Crown tank, I will say this, quality and craftsmanship is much better out of the box, but long term, at least with my first one I had, it was not as good as I had hoped. It did not hold up well over time. I don't know if it was just me, I don't know if it was just the one I got. Let me know if any of you guys have had any issues with yours long term, if you've had it for a month plus, because that's how long I had my first one for. Now, here we go, let's talk about a few of the things that went wrong on the first one as far as quality goes. So the overall quality and quality control out of the box, it was phenomenal. It looks great, there's no chipped glass, and it's really well put together. There's no excess metal, there's no kind of residue in the tank or anything that I had to watch out for when I was vaping, and all in all, I'm very satisfied with it. But over time, on the first one, what would happen is I'd go to unscrew this top fill component, and instead of it unfilling like that, it would actually unscrew the entire top piece, and the tank would fall apart and have juice drip everywhere, which is a huge piss off. Now, since I've gotten this one, I haven't had that issue. Also, one thing I will say is this isn't a quality control issue, but it is still a con in my mind, and that's this airflow control ring that unfortunately is so close to the bottom and sticks out so much, it makes it very difficult to grab the bottom of the tank to unscrew it off your device. And as you can see here, even just grabbing it normally, your instinct is to go around the airflow control valve. Without a stopper in place for this airflow, and you can just keep spinning it, it basically means you're going to keep doing this over and over and over and over again until you finally either take off the tank from the device, or much more likely you take off the bottom from the glass and juice ends up going everywhere. You're starting to see a theme with this tank. Now again, it's not a big thing, and maybe I'm the only one who has trouble with that. Maybe it's just my big fingers or something. I don't know what it is, but something is causing it where I find it very difficult to take this off of a device. You may not. Now let's open it up and check out the inside of it. Check out the coil as well. As you can see here, we do have a coil in here, and again, we'll get to the coil section later on, but coil fits in nicely, and bottom pin as well is very nice. Again, I believe it's silver plated, and the juice itself, or the juice fill itself, is very useful as well. Now that being said, which do I prefer? Do I prefer having to take off this entire top piece and having to put it aside somewhere and then dripping? Or do I prefer the TFV4 where everything stays together and I don't have to worry about putting anything aside? Truthfully for me, I prefer the TFV4, although I will say this, it can be sometimes hard to push it out of the top of the tank. Sometimes it does get stuck and it locks in there pretty tightly, so just keep that in mind. But other than that, for me personally, I don't like having to take this whole thing off, putting it aside somewhere, and then trying to find it and put it back on. Whereas TFV4, it's just everything's right there, so I don't have to worry about losing anything. Now that's pretty much the craftsmanship and design of the tank. Both these tanks are designed very well, and both of them can handle very high wattage. Now, of course, why can they handle high wattage? Well, that has to do a lot with the coils. The coils, for example, on the Crown tank, I would say are optimal between 90 to 100 watts is my recommended setting. That being said, that's just my preference. You may like it cooler, you may like it warmer. I couldn't push it much higher than 100, to be honest, without it getting a burnt hit. Pretty much, I would say I'd get maybe half a day of coil life out of it if I pushed past 100, and then it would just be pure burning. So keep that in mind. I couldn't get it over 100. Maybe you could, and again, that depends on the size of your hits. I typically take longer hits, which is obviously going to wear down the coil faster. This coil is made out of stainless steel. It's 316 grade, and I believe it's 316L grade stainless steel. To be completely honest, I'm not the expert on stainless steel. There's plenty of other reviewers out there who are doing a great job on the composition of these coils and what the actual metals are, but that will not be me. So all I'm going to say is that this is a stainless steel coil, and it's done right, because it can handle those high wattages no problem. Now, as you can see here, it is also organic cotton in the middle, or around the coil as well. You do have organic cotton, which wicks up nicely, and the coil itself, it is a proprietary coil as far as I know. I haven't seen any coils that I can see fitting in this tank other than their own, which is fine because the Smok is the exact same way. You're probably not going to be able to fit in any other coils other than their own coil brands. So again, that's just something to keep in mind. And so the coil itself performs well, flavors very good in the Crown tank, and my personal optimal setting on it is between 90 and 100 watts. Now, moving on to the Smok TFV4 coils, they are much different, and they're also a very different design as well. So as you can see here, it is a vertical coil and it is a parallel coil, if I'm not mistaken. If you can see in there, maybe it's not a parallel coil actually, I apologize. It doesn't look to be a parallel coil. The Smok TFV4, however, has some very nice coils in place, and what you're looking at with that, if I can get it out of the box here, just so I can get all the coils in front of you. So what we have here, I'm just going to put these off to the side again, just so they're out of the way. Okay, so with the Smok TFV4, we'll start out with the quad coil, and this is actually my favorite coil, but unfortunately, I've actually already pretty much use its lifespan up. As you can see here, it is starting to get black in the center, and this actually is two parallel coils stacked on top of each other, which equates to a quad coil. Now again, you can see the juice flow control, or the juice flow valves over here, just along the side. They are very different. They're different looking, but they do work, and they work at very high wattages. This particular coil, I prefer to vape at around 125 watts, and at 125 watts, I do not have any issues with getting a dry hit or a burnt hit at all. The coil life on this one, however, is only about 5 days at 125 watts. So you are losing out on coil life quite a bit. Keep that in mind. Now with the Crown coil, I don't think I mentioned it, but the Crown coil I get about 5 or 6 days out of those coils as well, and that's at a much lower temperature, or a much lower wattage. That is at only about 90 to 100 watts, not 125. So you're getting less. The coils are lasting about the same amount of time, but you're also getting less wattage through them, so it's a bit of a con there. And moving on, we also have the tri-coil here. We can take this out. Now, as you can see here, the tri-coil is a very unique, different design. You have a different juice fill system on the sides here, and I think it has 3 of them. 1, 2, yeah. So it has 3 juice flow or juice wells for the wicking, and they pretty much line up with each of these 3 coils in the center here, if you can see that. And I'll see if I can get it to focus. It's going to be very hard to see in there, and I do apologize, but hopefully you can kind of tell what the coils look like. Now this one in particular, the recommended wattage for this for me was about 105 watts. If I pushed any higher, I was starting to get burnt tastes. Also, this coil itself only lasted about 5 days as well. In fact, I think this one actually lasted a little bit less than that, so that was very disappointing. And the coils for these are not cheap, but we'll get into that later on. Now with the RBA deck, you already saw it briefly before when I did the unboxing of it, but we'll show it to you one more time. Here's the RBA deck. Like I said, juice wells are amazing. The actual design of it though, I'm not a fan of this style where you have to put it through on each side. Yes, you can wrap around the screw, but it looks ugly and it's a pain in the ass trying to get this chimney piece back on here when you do try and wrap around, because you have to cut it very, very close, because as you can see, those screws are so close to the side. Overall, I'm not displeased with this though. Like I said, the way it wicks is amazing. It's the best wicking RBA section I've used to date, and I don't use a lot of RBAs because I have trouble wicking. This one I did not have much trouble with, so I do like it for that. Now those are the coils for the Smok TFV4. Obviously, when we're talking about coils, we should probably mention the fact that the Crown coils do come in nickel as well. So you can have nickel or temperature control coils if you'd like. Now they pretty much look the exact same as the factory coil, but I have one right here which I'll show you. So they do look pretty much the exact same as the original that you just saw. The one I just showed you was a 0.25. This is obviously the nickel one. You can see here 0.15, I believe. If you can see that, there we go, 0.15, and it is the NI200. Now again, this wicks very well. It's very clean. If you like temperature control, sure. But the thing is, I think temperature control is really starting to die down a lot. People are getting more and more concerned about what's in it and what the risks are and how it works. And a lot of people are trying to lean toward titanium. For me personally, I'm basically leaning away from temperature control in general, because even titanium scares me a little bit. And that's the thing, is that any of these temp control things, they're not gimmicks, because people will use them. In fact, I've used them myself, and some of them I actually quite enjoy, but it is in the back of my mind when I'm using a nickel coil that I'm always worried about what could happen. Now, I would assume that the Smok TFV4 will come out with nickel coils as well, and if they do, I'll probably buy them just for the purposes of review, but I most likely will not be using them as my main vape. To be honest, between the 2 coils I did receive, the quad coil and the tri coil, I very much so like the quad coil better, just because I could hit higher wattages. Now again, that all depends on what kind of vaping style you have. If you prefer cooler vapes, the quad coil probably isn't your favorite coil. If you don't prefer cooler vapes and you like a very hot or warm vape, the quad coil is probably the preferred one. The tri coil is not too bad either. It's definitely not too shabby, but the quad coil wins it in my mind. So the question is, based on the 2 coils we have, the Crown coils and the TFV4, which do I prefer? Well, let's start with, and I'm going to get into the pricing here a little bit, but let's start with the pricing on these coils. This is a per coil cost. So if you get a pack of coils, this is what it's going to cost me to get the pack of coils for each coil. The Crown coils run for $5 a piece. In other words, you get a 4-pack for $20. The TFV4 coils, on the other hand, at my local shop, the quad coils are running for $30 for 5, which equates to $6 per coil. However, the tri-coils, which is interesting because I actually prefer the quad coil, but the tri-coils are running for $37, or let's round it down to say $35 for a pack of 5, which equates to $7 per coil. So yes, the Crown has the cheapest coils. Yes, they're all lasting me about the same time based on my vaping style, which is about 5 days. And yes, it is starting to get expensive vaping all these coils. So the question is, which of these wins it? And ultimately, I'm a big fan of the Crown, but I have to go with the TFV4, the quad coil, in particular the quad coil. The price, it's a little steep, but it's worth it. You are getting a much better vape at a high wattage at least out of that coil. The tri-coil is very good as well, but the fact that it's more expensive and that you're not getting as much vapor out of it, or not necessarily as much vapor, but not as much wattage or heat out of it, makes it a bit of a downfall to me. For me, the quad coil wins it just based on overall vape style for how I vape and how I choose to vape, as well as just overall the experience from the coil, I guess would be the word I'm looking for. Now, with that being said, we've talked about the coils, and the winner was the Smok TFV4. We've talked about packaging. The winner was the Smok TFV4. We've also talked about quality control, and I don't think I actually gave a winner to that one, and that's simply because both of them have their issues. And truthfully, I was disappointed with both of them, especially going off my first Crown tank where I had all those issues. The second one has been better, I will admit, but they both have their flaws, and they both were definitely things that I really wish they would have looked after more. So with that being said, that's a draw. Now, so far, yes, the Smok is up 2-0. It is 2-0 in favor of the Smok tank. That doesn't mean the Smok tank's going to win, and we'll get to that in once we go back up top here. But let's talk about pricing on these two tanks. So, yes, the Crown tank is cheaper. In fact, the Crown tank is going to run you roughly... it'll probably run you well, for me, again, let's go based on what I paid for these tanks. I paid $52 for the Crown tank, and I paid $60 for the TFV4. That being said, the TFV4 for $8 more includes an RBA. The Crown tank did not. The Crown tank for the RBA was an additional $20, bringing the total cost of this tank up to $72 instead of $52. That would be a $12 difference between the two tanks. However, now that if you include an RBA with the Crown tank, you'd also basically be paying for an extra coil, meaning that you'd have one more coil in the Crown setup if it included an RBA and the coils it already comes with than what you get in the TFV4 setup. So we're at $72 for the Crown tank fully set up with the RBA section, which, by the way, I do not have and I don't want to have because I have no interest in it, versus $60 for the TFV4, but with one less coil. If we add in the cost of an extra coil, let's even say it's the expensive one, the tri-coil, at $7 a coil, you're now up to $67 for the TFV4 and $72 for the Crown. The Crown is still more expensive based on my store. Again, I'm just saying based on my store. You may have had different experiences. Maybe it's cheaper for you, maybe it's not. But again, so yes, the Crown is slightly more expensive. That being said, the coils are cheaper for the Crown. It's $5. It ends up being $5 per coil for the Crown versus $6 or even $7 per coil for the TFV4. So yes, in the long run, I believe the Crown will be cheaper with the cost of the coils incorporated into that. Again, for the long haul. The TFV4 is going to end up being more expensive when you include the coils in the long haul. And again, that's assuming you're getting the quad coil or the tri-coil. I do believe they have a dual coil as well, and they're actually coming out with other coils, but we won't get into those. We're just going to base it off the two coils that I actually tried and what I know the prices for. So ultimately, which one wins in pricing? Well, that's a good question. The initial purchase, sure, is only a few dollars more for the Crown, but in the long run, the actual replacement coils are going to be cheaper. So in that case, I have to give pricing to the Crown. The Crown is priced much better. But again, we have to go back to what was included in the Smok TFV4 box compared to what's included in the Crown box. Both of them do have extra O-rings. Or sorry, the Crown has extra O-rings. This does not have extra O-rings. This has an extra juice fill cap or whatever you want to call it, but it does not have extra O-rings. This one did. But this one does have an extra juice fill cap. This one doesn't actually need an extra juice fill cap because it's all part of the machining. It's machined into the tank itself. Something to know. So ultimately the pricing war goes to the Crown tank. I feel like it's a better value in the long run just based off of pricing alone. Again, we're not including the actual experience of these tanks. We're just rating it on different categories. And for the category of pricing, the Crown tank wins it. Now, with that being said, we've gone over the pricing, we've gone over the coils, we've gone over quality control, and we've gone over packaging. So what do you say we take them back up top, vape on them both, and find out which one has the better vapor and the better flavor?
Alright guys, we are back up top with the Crown tank, which I have my Sigelli 150 temp control, and the Smok TFV4, which I have my IPv3 Li. What we're going to be doing is doing a test on the flavor and the vapor production on both of these tanks in 10 watt increments. So we're going to start at 50 watts and work our way up. Once I get a burnt or a dry hit from one of them, I will stop with the one and keep going with the other until I get that burnt or dry hit. And what we're going to do is just, again, measure it by flavor and by vapor production. So this is already set to 50 watts. Both of these have the exact same juice in it. Both of them have pretty much full battery power, so there shouldn't be any issues with that. They both should hit about the same. And yeah, from there, what we'll do, 50 watts, check out which one has better flavor at 50 watts and which one has better vapor density or vapor production at 50 watts. We'll start with the Crown tank first. Not bad vapor production, but both these tanks are meant to be vaped at a higher wattage. Let's just be honest there. Flavor's really good there on the Crown tank, just not a ton of vapor, so keep that in mind. At 50 watts, it's okay. Let's check out the TFV4 at 50 watts as well. A little bit more vapor, but to be honest, there's pretty much no flavor, it's just all air. And that's what you're getting with the 4 adjustable airflow slots, is you're going to get more vapor, but again, you're going to lose it on flavor because you're getting a lot more air with it. Now again, that being said, that was 50 watts, wasn't bad. One thing I will say is I'm using the quad coil in this just because the tri-coil was completely burnt out. This one I was able to clean out a little bit, so I should be able to get at least some flavor back into it. But it's not going to affect my review on this part because I know how it hits at 90, 100 watts anyways. So even if I do end up with a burnt taste or something like that, I'll just relay back the information I had from, say, yesterday or 2 days ago prior to the coil burning out and having that really nice flavor. So again, that was 50 watts. What we'll do is we'll crank them both up to 60 watts. We'll come back and we'll vape on them both there. Alright guys, they've both been set to 60 watts now. We're now at the 60 watt mark. We're going to again start with the Crown tank and see how the vapor is, see how the flavor is, and then we'll move on to the Smok TFV4 and see how it compares. As you can see, a lot more vapor at 60 watts. That's when it's starting to shine. You're going to get some really good flavor out of it at 60 watts. And again, the vapor production is definitely there. Very good at 60 watts for the Crown tank. The TFV4. Again, a lot of vapor, but still it's a little bit airy. You're losing out on the flavor a little bit. And in my mind, at the low wattages, I already knew this beforehand, the Crown tank is definitely the winner. We'll crank it up to 70 watts and see what happens though. Alright guys, both these tanks are now set to 70 watts. Let's vape on them both and see what we get from them. So we'll start with the Crown tank again. Really, really good flavor from that. Really nice vapor production. That was probably the most flavorful hit I've had so far. Which makes sense because it's at higher wattage and it's starting to really come out now at 70 watts. Let's check out the TFV4 and see how it vapes. Again, really good vapor production. You're starting to get a little bit of flavor into it, but I still think the better flavor came from the Crown tank at 70 watts. Let's crank them up to 80 and see what happens. Alright guys, they've both been set to 80 watts. We're going to start with the Crown tank again, and let's see how it works. Really good vapor production. Again, really good flavor now. I'm getting it a lot right now at 80 watts. I would say 80 watts is near the optimal wattage range for this, where you're going to start getting the best flavor and the best vapor combined. Let's check out how the TFV4 produces at 80 watts and just see how it compares. Again, definitely a lot more flavor in that one. You're starting not to get just air, you're starting to get a lot of flavor out of it. But ultimately, I think that the Crown still has better flavor at 80 watts. So let's crank it up to 90 watts and see which one performs better. Alright guys, they are both set to 90 watts. Let's check out how they perform and see how the flavor is and how the vapor is. Oh, see, that's actually where I prefer to vape the Crown Tank, is around 90 watts. I feel that's the optimal range for it. Really nice flavor, beautiful vapor production, really nice throat hit as well, very dense. Let's do the TFV4 at 90 watts and see how it works. Again, vapor quality, vapor production is about the same actually at 90 watts. You're getting about the same out of it. The flavor is good in this, but I still think the Crown wins in the flavor aspect at the 90 watt range. So what do you say we crank up to 100 watts each and see what happens? Alright, they have both been set to 100 watts. Let's check out how the vapor is and how the flavor is as well. So this is 100 watts on the Crown Tank. Flavor is really good. Definitely a warmer vape now. Vapor production, as you saw, was really nice as well. Overall, the Crown does perform very well at 100 watts, but you are going to start losing coil life very fast at 100 watts. So keep that in mind. The TFV4, let's check out how it performs at 100 watts. Really nice vapor production, really good flavor. I would say they're about the same right now as far as flavor goes. They're both very good, but let's crank up to 110 watts and see which one performs better. Okay, they're both set to 100 watts. We're going to try them out. I have a feeling I might get a burnt taste or a burnt hit, at least at the tail end of the Crown Tank. That's what I seem to notice before, but we'll try it out, see what happens, and see how it performs. So 110 watts on both these devices, starting with the Crown Tank. Really nice vapor production, very good flavor. There was no burnt taste, which is actually very good. It's a very nice flavor. 110 watts, it is working quite nicely. Now let's see how the TFV4 produces at 110 watts. Very good flavor. Vapor production is very good as well, as you saw. In this case, I think that the Crown Tank still has great flavor, but the TFV4 edges out a little bit at 110 watts. And it's starting to heat up now, which is nice. I think once we get to 120 watts, this is going to shine, and this is where we're going to start getting a burnt hit on the Crown Tank. But I could be wrong, so let's try it out. Alright, both devices are set to 120 watts. We're going to try the Crown Tank first and see how it performs. Again, very warm vape, good flavor, good vapor production. I still haven't got a burnt hit actually, which is really surprising for me because I thought it would have hit burnt by now, but I guess this coil is really well broken in and it's really starting to shine. 120 watts, it's still working well. Let's try the TFV4 and see how it works. TFV4, excellent flavor, excellent vapor production. And again, it's going to be the clear-cut winner on flavor. Just at this high wattage, 120 watts, it's hitting nicely right now. Let's crank it up to 130 watts and see what happens. Alright guys, we're up to 130 watts on both these devices. Let's see how they both perform, and we'll get back from there. Good vapor production. Still no burn hit either, which is very surprising. I thought for sure I would have had a burn hit by now, and I haven't. However, it looks like the flavor is kind of leveled off. In fact, I think I've actually lost some flavor in the Crown Tank. But let's see how the TFV4 performs at 130 watts and do a comparison on that. Again, good vapor production, good flavor. I'm starting to get a bit of a burnt hit. Not a burnt hit, but like a burnt taste. And I think that's because of the coil, because I did have it up to 130 watts a couple days ago, no problem. And I feel like the coil is just, it's on its last legs. It's kicking as hard as it can. But again, it's not performing as well as it was a couple days ago. So let's crank it up to 140 watts and check out what happens. All right, we're up to 140 watts on both these devices. They're both going head to head real strong. It's actually very surprising right now because I can't believe they're both lasting this long, but this is 140 watts on the Crown tank and 140 watts on TFV4. Let's start with the Crown tank and see how it performs. Good vapor production. Again, I'm losing flavor, but I'm not getting a dry or burnt hit, so it's very weird what's happening right now. At 140 watts, I'm losing some flavor, but it's not a burnt and it's not a dry hit. It's just like the flavor's getting more muted the higher it goes. So 140 watts still performs, but you're going to lose out on a little bit of flavor. Let's try the TFV4. TFV4, really good flavor at the start, but at the very end of that hit, I got a bit of a burnt taste. Now, I'm not sure if that's a coil itself or if that's just me maxing this coil out, and I've actually hit the limit now. Because at 140 watts, even before when I had it, I get a little bit of a dry or of a burnt hit, so it's burning a little bit. It's not too bad. It's bearable, but I think I'm going to call it quits on the TFV4. And let's crank the Crown tank, max it out at 150 watts and see what happens. Alright guys, this is unexpected. I did not expect this test to go the way it has, but the Crown is actually at 150 watts. We're maxing out this Sigelli 150. If it can hit without a dry or a burnt taste, it will be the winner as far as the amount of wattage that these devices can go. This is a complete surprise to me. I did not expect this to happen. There is something about this coil, and maybe this is part of the other thing, is that with the Crown tank, I think that the coils are very inconsistent, because I've had other coils that have only gone up to about 100 watts before I get a burnt or a dry hit. This one, I don't know, this is like magic right now. 150 watts. Let's see if we get a dry hit and see what happens. Nothing. Same thing. Good vapor production. The flavor, it's a little bit more muted again, but it's still not a burnt or a dry hit. I'll take another hit just to show you guys. Still nothing. I mean, I could pretty much chain vape this, I think, and it would be the same as it has been as well. So I'm going to hit it 150 one more time, and we'll see what happens. The drip tip is very, very hot right now. It's actually burning my lips, but the vapor itself is flavorful. It's hitting, and I think what we're going to have to do is switch out the device and go up to 160 watts on the IPv3 Li with the Crown tank just to see what happens. Alright guys, we're up to 160 watts. Hopefully you can see that. 160 watts on the Crown tank. I have no idea what to expect. I've never taken a Crown tank this high before, but this coil is just working right now, so let's take a hit and see what happens. $160 watts. The flavor is definitely reduced. I'm starting to taste almost like a metal taste, so I'm not going to push any harder than that. But 160 watts, no dry hit, no burning taste. It's on par right now. I got to be honest, guys. This is working for me right now. 160 watts. I'm getting, like I said, I got a little bit of a metal taste to it, but no burnt hit, no dry hit. So there you go, guys. So ultimately the question is, which of these two tanks do I prefer? We've gone through the packaging, we've gone through the pricing, we've gone through coils, we've gone through quality control and the design of the tank. And overall, which one do I prefer? Well, let's start with what your vaping style is. If you like pushing the limits and you like going up to 120, 130 watts in that range, I like the TFV4 at the 120 watt mark. However, I was very unexpected, or this is actually very unexpected, that the Crown tank was not only able to hold its weight, but it also outperformed the TFV4. Now again, this is an older coil in this. Well, actually, they're not really older coils. They're almost about the same coil life. But the difference is this actually burnt out a couple days ago, and somehow this one is still going. This coil is about 4 days old. This one's about 6. And I can't believe this one's hitting as well as it has, because I have never had a Crown tank hit this well. That being said, if you like a cooler vape, in the beginning the flavor was definitely better, upwards of the 80 watt mark in the Crown tank. Once you hit about 90 watts, it starts to level out a little bit, and in that 100 watt plus range, the TFV4 does have more flavor, up until about 130 watts, 135 maybe if you push it. At 140 watts, you're going to get a bit of a burn hit on the end if you do take long hauls. This one, I am super shocked it went to 140 watts. In fact, the fact it went to 160 watts is amazing. Clearly there's something going on with this coil that I'm amazed right now. I cannot believe this happened, because I was not expecting it. So, ultimately, which one do I prefer? If every coil on the Crown tank was this good, the Crown tank might actually be the winner in this case. However, based on past experiences with the Crown tank, I kind of want to give it to the Smok TFV4 as well. I was not expecting this to happen. I thought I had a clear-cut winner in my mind when I started recording this video, and then all of a sudden this last test has really, it's got me really confused, because I have no idea who to pick right now. I think if you got either one of these tanks, you'd be very happy with them. There is nothing wrong with either of these tanks. They're both performing very well. But I think going forward, which one will I use more? Probably the TFV4, just based on personal preference. I do like it at around 125 watts. I find it's like the perfect hit, and I haven't had anything even close to that. Even on the Crown tank, again, at 120 watts, you are losing flavor, at least a little bit. And I think the Smok TFV4 does outproduce it. But again, with the cost of the coils based on this review, if we're strictly basing off this review and how things have gone to this point, I kind of have to give it to the Crown tank. I know that going forward I will be most likely using the TFV4 in favor of the Crown tank, but I don't know why that is. For some reason, I just like the TFV4 better. I like the top fill aspect better. I like using it on my devices better, and I really like it at 125 watts, which it performs very nicely. But again, guys, this is surprising. So ultimately, based on this review alone, the Crown tank wins it. I'm shocked. I'm very shocked. I didn't expect this to happen, especially for my vaping style. But the Crown tank, just based on what we just did, wins this competition. So that's my review. That is my head-to-head. Again, I'm probably just as surprised as some of you guys are right now, because I honestly thought the Smok would get it, and for some reason, this one coil, it's almost like it knew it was in a competition. It was battling for its life. It did not want to give up, and it just kept going and going and going. And with that in mind, let's crank this up to 170 watts just for shits and giggles and end the video there. So as you can see here, 170 watts. Hopefully you can see that. 170 watts on the Crown tank on the IPV3 Li, which by the way I just upgraded to 200 watts. And I've actually been maxing out my Twisted Messes RD on this at 200 watts with the Claptons. So the upgrade on this, it makes it a really nice device, the IPV3 Li, and I will have a head-to-head coming out soon between the IPV3 Li and the Skelly 150 temp control, but that'll be a different video. Anyways, guys, that finishes this video off. Let's sign it off with a 170 watt vape on the Crown tank, and hopefully I don't cough up a lung on this one. But until next time, YouTube, happy vaping.